The morning sun broke softly over the sleepy town of Willow Creek, brushing the rooftops with gold. Inside a small white house at the end of Maple Lane, 14-year-old Emily Carter sat by her window, her wheelchair still beside her. Her eyes followed the neighborhood kids running to school, their laughter echoing faintly through the air. She used to be one of them, full of life, laughter, and motion, until the accident that changed everything. 2 years ago, a drunk driver's mistake stole the strength from her legs. Since that night, her world had shrunk to this house, this window, this chair. Her mother, Sarah, did everything she could to make life feel normal again, but the spark in Emily's eyes had faded. "Breakfast's ready, sweetheart," Sarah called from the kitchen, her voice gentle but tired. Emily wheeled herself to the table, her fingers trembling slightly on the wheels. "Mom," she asked softly, "can we visit the shelter today?" Sarah paused halfway through pouring coffee. "The animal shelter?" Again, Emily nodded. "I just want to see them." "The dogs?" Sarah hesitated. Every time they went, Emily would smile for a while, whisper through the kennel bars, then cry all the way home. But there was something in her daughter's eyes today, a quiet hope she hadn't seen in so long. "All right," Sarah said at last, after lunch. At the Willow Creek Animal Shelter, a tall man named Mark Jensen struggled to calm a German Shepherd in the back kennel. The dog thrashed and snarled, teeth flashing through the bars. "Easy, Shadow, easy," he said firmly, but the dog lunged again, barking wildly. A younger volunteer shook his head. "He's done, Mark. That's 3 bites in 2 weeks. They're going to put him down." Mark sighed, looking into the dog's fearful, broken eyes. "He's not evil. Someone hurt him. He just doesn't know how to trust anymore." Meanwhile, Emily and Sarah entered the shelter. The familiar smell of fur and disinfectant filled the air. "You can look, but stay close to me," Sarah said as she pushed the wheelchair down the rows of kennels. Emily smiled at each wagging tail and pair of hopeful eyes. "Hi there," she whispered to a golden retriever, "you're beautiful." The dogs barked and wagged, filling the air with joyful noise, until a sharp growl cut through everything. "Mom," Emily turned her head. At the far end, a large German Shepherd stood trembling, teeth bared, eyes wide with fear. "Back up, folks," Mark warned the visitors nearby. "He's not friendly." But Emily didn't move. Her gaze locked onto the dog. She didn't see anger. She saw pain. "What's his name?" she asked quietly. "Shadow," Mark said. "Found tied up behind an abandoned factory. Beaten, starved, he doesn't trust anyone." "Can I go closer?" Sarah shook her head quickly. "No, honey, he's dangerous." Emily didn't look away. "He doesn't look dangerous. He looks sad." For a brief moment, the dog's growling softened. His ears twitched at the sound of her voice. "See that?" Emily whispered. "He's just scared." Mark frowned. "He's unpredictable, sweetheart. You can't." "Please," Emily interrupted softly. "Just for a moment." Mark hesitated, then looked at Sarah. Sarah's face was pale with fear, but she finally nodded reluctantly. "Just stay behind the line," she murmured. Mark held the leash tightly as Emily wheeled forward, slow and steady. "Hey, Shadow," she said gently, "it's okay. Nobody's going to hurt you now." The dog tensed, growled once more, then froze. Her voice was soft, trembling but calm, like something familiar. "It's okay," she whispered again. "I know how it feels to be broken." Something changed. Shadow lowered his head. The growling stopped. Slowly, Emily extended her hand through the bars. Mark held his breath. "Don't." But before he could finish, Shadow stepped forward. He sniffed her fingers, then pressed his wet nose against her palm. Emily gasped softly, tears filling her eyes. "Hi, boy," she whispered. Sarah covered her mouth in shock. "Oh my God, he's never let anyone touch him," Mark murmured in disbelief. "Not once." Emily smiled through tears. Maybe he just needed someone who understands pain. That day changed everything. From then on, Emily came to the shelter every day. At first, She just sat outside Shadow's cage, reading to him in her quiet, steady voice. Once upon a time, she read one morning, there was a brave knight who couldn't walk, but his heart carried him farther than his legs ever could. Shadow watched her, ears flicking. He didn't bark. He just listened. A week later, he began sitting near the bars when she arrived, tail thumping quietly whenever he heard her voice. You like stories, huh? She giggled softly. Me too. Mark noticed the change. He hasn't barked at anyone in days, he told Sarah. It's like she's healing him. But nobody realized. He was healing her too. For months, Emily had refused physical therapy. What's the point? She used to say. My legs don't work. Now, every morning, she woke up early just to see him. Mom, she said one morning, smiling, can we go early? I don't want Shadow to think I forgot him. By the third week, Shadow let her brush his fur through the bars. It grew soft again, shining in the light. His eyes, once wild, turned warm and trusting. You're beautiful, Shadow, Emily whispered one afternoon. I wish people could see that. Then one day, Mark opened the gate. You want to take him out? Sarah froze. Mark, are you serious? He's ready, Mark said softly. If she is. Emily's heart pounded. Can I really? Only if you want to, Sarah said nervously. I trust him. Mark slowly opened the door, keeping the leash tight. Shadow stepped out cautiously, tail low but calm. Emily smiled. Hey, it's okay. It's me. The dog sniffed her wheelchair, then gently rested his head on her lap. Emily's lips trembled as tears rolled down her cheeks. He trusts me. Mark blinked rapidly, his voice breaking. You're a miracle, kid. From that day forward, they were inseparable. Emily helped train him, teaching commands with gentle patience. Shadow learned quickly, eager to please the girl who had seen goodness in him. One morning during training, her wheelchair hit a small stone, jolting hard. She gasped, but before Mark could react, Shadow barked, ran around her, and nudged the chair upright with his head. Emily laughed through tears. Good boy, you helped me. Mark shook his head in awe. He's protecting you. As weeks turned to months, Emily's therapist began noticing changes. Your muscles are responding again, Emily, drive. Alan said. You're getting stronger. Her eyes widened. Really? Yes. He smiled. Keep believing in yourself. That night, she whispered to Shadow as they sat together. You're my reason to fight again. Shadow licked her hand softly, curling beside her chair. When the shelter held its annual adoption event, Mark smiled at the crowd. We have one special dog today, he announced. A dog who found light again, because of an even more special girl. The audience applauded as Emily wheeled forward, Shadow trotting beside her, calm and proud. This is Shadow, she said, her voice shaking. He used to be called Dangerous. Now, he's my best friend. Tears filled the room. Sarah cried silently in the back. I want to adopt him, Emily said bravely. Mark grinned. I think he already adopted you. The crowd erupted in cheers. That night, Shadow walked into his new home for the first time. He sniffed every corner, then curled beside Emily's bed. Welcome home, Shadow, she whispered. He wagged his tail softly and fell asleep. Life bloomed again in that little white house. Emily started therapy again, this time with purpose. Shadow stayed beside her through every painful session, head resting on her lap. You can do this, Em, her therapist said. For Shadow, she smiled, I can. Each movement was a battle, but she never gave up. And then, one cold December morning, something extraordinary happened. Emily sat in her wheelchair, gripping the parallel bars. Okay, drive, Alan said gently. When you're ready. She looked down at Shadow, who gazed back at her with endless faith. She took a breath, and stood. Her legs trembled, but they held. Mom, she cried, voice breaking. I'm standing. Sarah gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. Oh my God, Emily. Shadow barked joyfully, tail wagging as if he understood the miracle before him. Emily laughed through tears, reaching for his fur. We did it, Shadow. We did it. That moment became the heart of the town's miracle. A girl who had lost everything, and a dog who had been thrown away, standing together. From then on, Emily walked short distances every day, always with Shadow beside her. They visited parks, lakes, schools. People who once pitied her now smiled in admiration. Is that the same dog? A woman asked once. Yes, Sarah said proudly. The one they called aggressive. He doesn't look aggressive now. No, Sarah smiled. He looks loved. Years passed. Emily could walk on her own now, though she always kept her wheelchair close, a reminder of how far she'd come. Shadow grew older, his muzzle gray, his pace slower. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky orange and pink, Emily sat on the porch with him at her side. His head rested on her lap, his breathing soft. You saved me, she whispered. You taught me to stand again, not just on my legs, but in life. Shadow wagged his tail weakly, eyes closing as the sun dipped below the horizon. I'll never forget you, she whispered, tears falling into his fur. That night, under a sky full of stars, Shadow passed peacefully in his sleep. Emily found him in the morning, his head resting against her wheelchair. She cried for hours, holding him close. Thank you, she whispered through trembling lips, for everything. They buried him beneath the old oak tree in the backyard, the same tree she could now walk to on her own. She hung his collar on a low branch and whispered, "You'll always be here." Years later, Emily became a therapist specializing in animal-assisted rehabilitation. Her first patient was a young boy, paralyzed after an accident. I don't think I can do it, he said sadly. Emily smiled and pointed to a framed photo on her desk, her and Shadow, smiling together. You can, she said softly. I once thought I couldn't either, until I met someone who showed me how to believe again. Who was it? The boy asked. She looked out the window, where sunlight poured through the trees. A dog named Shadow. Outside, the breeze rustled through the oak leaves, the same tree that still held his collar. She could almost hear his bark in the wind. Thank you, she whispered, for never giving up on me. The sunlight broke through the clouds then, bathing her in gold, warm and full of peace, as if the world itself was saying, they both made it. Emily closed her eyes and smiled through her tears. Because somewhere deep inside, she knew the truth, love had healed them both. Sometimes, the ones we rescue are the ones who rescue us.